Hey everyone, welcome to the weekly tarot forecast for the Numinous week beginning June the 29th. I'm Lindsay Mack, and the card that I've pulled for us this week is the Five of Swords. Swords are never the most... I feel like no one prays to get a sword card in a reading. I enjoy the swords, I appreciate the medicine of the swords, but it's not necessarily the sweetest medicine, nor is the five a particularly sweet medicine, but yet here we find ourselves. And what it brings for us is something that we may not necessarily love, but is immensely important for our soul's highest and best, as is, you could argue all things are. So here's what we got this week. Any five in the tarot, as I've mentioned before, is a contraction. Think of birth, think of death, think of physics. Anything that contracts has to expand. There's an equal opposite for every single action in this world. So when we're contracting, if we're in labor, the contractions have a function. They hurt and cause discomfort physically, but they are literally here to open us. And we can think of, I'll bet if you zoom out and look at your life in all different kinds of ways, every single time something not particularly loved or wanted or appreciated, you could view it as a contraction, and we have a choice in those contractions. We can either expand, breathe through them, invite in the evolution and the expansion on the other side of them, or we can stay really caught in the contraction. It's the same thing with the idea of Thich Nhat Hanh's phrase, no mud, no lotus. We can have deep nourishment, beautiful lotuses through the mud, but we can also have more mud. So it's up to us. So this is a very deep choice week, so everyone feels that sense of empowerment. With a five, and especially with a minor, you can really go one of two ways with it, multitude of different ways with it. So the Five of Swords is essentially, because it can be viewed in many different ways, but at its root, at its core, it's an invitation to detach and to uncouple from a very old, very painful cycle of mental drama. It's very similar to the Three of Swords in that way, but with this, it's even more powerful, because the Three of Swords often happens when something externally occurs and we have an option. We can either remove the second arrow, so to speak, and kind of chill out our nervous system without identification. The Five of Swords is like, think about your kind of most shadowy things that you get caught in, where you're halfway through the bottle, halfway through the cake, halfway through literally fucking someone, where all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and you remember, like, oh, it's not that this person, the cake, or the alcohol in and of themselves are bad for me. It's that this thing is not in my highest and best. And my brain kind of tricked me into coming back here again. And why does the brain do that? The brain does that because if it senses that it's about to lose control over us, which happens every time we expand through a contraction, the ego loses a little bit of control, the soul comes a little bit closer to truth, the brain will get very quiet and really kind of strategic, and it'll attempt to put us in situations, link us in situations, it'll invite us into mental situations that are painful, but they're familiar, because the function of them is to get us out of the void of evolution, which is very scary to the nervous system, and in something that we know. So I invite you to not get scared about this, because we have the power in this life of saying no thank you to the brain's invitations. It doesn't mean that it won't be uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that it won't kind of blow. It doesn't matter if it's uncomfortable. This is life. Many things are uncomfortable. Many things are unfair. I don't say that to be lacking compassion. I say that to really honor reality. that feelings and even experiences are not necessarily the truth of who we are. They're not necessarily our truth or fact. So if you are swept into a really old, ancient thing this week, even if it's an invitation or a whisper in your ear, maybe you'll get completely blindsided. You'll be in the middle of it and you'll think, I can't believe what happened, that I'm back here. If that happens, celebrate it. Get excited. It's good. That means that potentially it's the last time you ever really have to move through that. Because fives are really powerful moments, especially the Five of Swords. So the way we can really change the dynamic and the work that's possible this week is, first of all, to be really present with our brain chemistry. What's going on? What kind of mental patterns are we entertaining? What kind of things are we moving through? Can we surf the waves rather than drown in them? So just to keep an eye out, and by the way, that the idea behind that is to be present. So if you're very gently present with yourself this week, really mindful, you can notice where the brain might be inviting you into. If we're mindful and present, then we have the opportunity to be compassionate with something that's very old that may arise that will invite us into a very old cycle or habit or pattern of mental kind of looping. If we find ourselves either in the middle of that or almost to the edge of that, the really, really, really crucial thing is to just wake up when we're waking up, to notice, to say, oh, I'm in the middle of this, or oh, I might be in the middle of this, whatever it is. Just say no thank you. You can stop in the middle of anything you're doing and just say, oh, actually, no thanks. So if you find yourself there, very empowering. It's a chance to really cut the cord karmically with whatever that cycle is. And thirdly, to have compassion. So I was just talking about compassion. Compassion is very important with this card. It's not necessarily a harbinger of anything negative. It's not a foreboding card, but it is a very profound one. It's a contraction that's really important to pay attention to. And by the way, it's not necessarily going to fuck up your July 4th plans. If you celebrate that or you observe that, it's not going to mess anything up. But it is really important to be present, deep feet on the ground. If you are noticing yourself shifting into an old pattern or an old mental pattern or an old mental cycle that you know brings you pain, it's important to stop, pause, inquire about why that might be. The bottom line answer to that is going to be that we're about to expand and the brain is scared. So if you can remember that, know that there's nothing wrong with you. We can disengage and uncouple and kind of be free of this cycle potentially forever. It's very, very important and really powerful to do. And one of the other wonderful ways of working with this is to be around community that you can really share this with very openly. So if you find yourself in that space, important to share about it. This was very long, but this card is very powerful, so it's important to really give you the full spectrum of what it's bringing and offering to us. So, Five of Swords, invitation to absolutely drop out of an old mental pattern. If you're in it, so what? You're going to be in it again. There's no bottom line, no line in the sand in this life. Everything is a teaching experience, and every single weed brings some kind of medicine. So I encourage you to look very deeply without judgment at where the brain might be inviting you into things because it's scared for your next great step.